Chapter 23. Beneath the Old House. Stone steps led downward to a dark, narrow tunnel beneath the old house. Even Nancy hesitated as she thought of the risks involved in venturing below unprotected. "George," she whispered, "you have my flashlight, don't you?" "Yes, but it's dangerous for us to go down there." "Let me have the flashlight," Nancy replied. "I'll investigate alone. You stay here and watch the outside door." "Oh, Nancy, please wait until Ned returns." "I don't dare. Our prisoner must surely have an accomplice. I'm convinced there's some tie-up between the Moncure crowd and the little man we found here. At this very minute, one of the gang may be destroying valuable evidence downstairs." Disregarding George's protests, Nancy took the light and slowly descended the stone steps. Fearfully, the other girls stood guard at the door in the wall. "Oh, Nancy," George called nervously, "do come back." "Shh! Everything is all right," her chum insisted. Nancy moved deeper into the dark passageway until her light could be seen no longer. Above, George waited with growing uneasiness. After 20 minutes had passed, she could not endure the suspense a moment longer. "Nancy!" she called softly. When there was no answer, she shouted her chum's name again. George became frightened. She was convinced Nancy was lost or in serious trouble somewhere below. "I'm going down," she determined. On the old buffet stood an antique candlestick with a half-burned candle in it. Beside it lay a match. George lighted it and, holding the candle before her, descended the steps. Reaching the bottom of the stairway, she groped her way along the passage until she glimpsed a closed door a short distance ahead. Just then her light began to flicker violently and suddenly went out. George had no way to relight it. As she was about to turn back, she suddenly became aware of footsteps. The tread seemed too heavy to be Nancy's. George flattened herself against the wall just as a figure brushed past her in the dark. A moment later, a man was silhouetted in the doorway at the top of the stairs. He went through, closing the door behind him. Stumbling up the stairway, George tested it. Her worst fears were confirmed. The door was locked. She and Nancy were prisoners underneath the cottage. Giving way to sheer terror, George kicked and pounded on the door, shouting for release. No one came to free her. "That man, whoever he is, has probably left the house," she thought. "Oh, why did I ever let Nancy get us into this mess?" "Nancy!" George recalled with alarm that she had come below to find her friend. Remembering the other closed door, the girl groped her way to it. At her touch, it readily moved inward. Nevertheless, she hesitated on the threshold, sniffing the air. George could see nothing, for the room was dark, but she did note a strange, sweet scent. As she breathed deeply, a dizzy, giddy feeling took possession of her. Why, Nancy had these sensations just before she fell asleep on the cliff, George recalled. "Oh, I'm being drugged." With all the strength she could muster, George pulled the door tightly shut. She felt so weak, her limbs barely could carry her away. Through sheer willpower, she stumbled along the passageway and up the stairs. Dropping to the floor, she pressed her face close to the crack under the door and sucked in great gulps of fresh air. At once, George felt better. Her head cleared and she no longer was weak or drowsy. Then, realizing that she had barely escaped being drugged into unconsciousness, a feeling of panic for Nancy's safety came over her. What had become of her? She surely had disappeared beyond the closed door because there was no other place to go. At this moment, she might be lying unconscious in the dark, sweet-scented room. I'll have to do something, George thought desperately, but what? Oh, why doesn't Ned come? Nancy truly was in need of help. After leaving George, she too had reached the closed door and cautiously opened it. A dim light burned overhead in the room, revealing a strange sight. Shelves along the walls were filled with bottles, vials, and flasks of colored liquid. There were quantities of perfume, lipstick, and face powder. It's a cosmetic factory, Nancy thought excitedly. And yes, they make Moncure products, she added as her gaze roved to a wooden bench upon which lay scattered samples of both Moncure and the newer Sweet Chimes labels. Hanging above the door was a gong. At this instant she became aware of men's voices. Desperately the girl sought a hiding place. Wooden benches against a wall offered the only possibility. Quickly she crawled underneath one of them. Barely had Nancy hidden herself than she heard the voices again. To her alarm, the sound seemed to come from behind the very wall where she crouched. "I'll have to go now," she heard one of the men say, "but you have your orders, Grumper. I arranged for that old fool, Amos Hendrick, to come to the cave. All you have to do is get his money, and if you're wise, you'll keep him there until the tide comes in." "That won't be hard to do, boss," was the reply. "She's due to turn in about 20 minutes. The voices became more distinct. Lying beneath the bench, Nancy was startled to see that close by, another bench was slowly moving inward. Evidently it was attached to a secret door which now was being opened by the approaching men. A rush of cool air struck her face. As she lay motionless, the door behind the bench opened wider, and two men with lighted lanterns tramped in. Before the opening closed, Nancy caught a glimpse of stone steps, and guessed that they led directly to the interior of the Tolling Bell Cave. One of the men was grotesquely misshapen, his head disproportionately large for his little body. Nancy was certain he must be A.H.'s old enemy, Grumper. From her position, Nancy could not see the other man's face, but his stocky figure was like that of Harry Tyrox, alias Monsieur Papier. Nancy listened eagerly as the men conversed in low tones. Just then, from outside the room, her own name was shouted in a loud voice. "Nancy, Nancy, where are you?" It was George, searching for her friend in the dark passageway. The two men heard the cry. "Get to work, Grumper," the dark-haired one ordered in a whisper. "We have visitors." The misshapen fellow pulled a can of blue powder from one of the wall shelves, and with a little water he quickly mixed it into a solution. Dividing the liquid equally into two containers, he jammed one of them into a tiny niche in the stone ceiling and left the other standing uncovered on the floor. "Now I'll take care of Amos Hendrick," he muttered. Slipping noiselessly through the bench door, he closed it behind him. The man with the lantern extinguished the overhead light. Nancy heard him tiptoe toward the other door. There was no further sound, but she was sure he had gone out. "I must follow him and help George," she thought vaguely. "He may harm her." Despite the need for haste, Nancy could not seem to hurry. As she crawled from beneath the bench, a sweet-smelling scent began to fill the room. She became lightheaded. "The drug," she thought in panic. "Unless I get out of here quickly, I'll never make it." Nancy pulled herself to a standing position, but she could not walk. Her feet seemed to weigh a ton. She knew she could never reach the passageway. Her only hope of escape was through the door behind the adjoining bench. Could she make it? Using all her strength, she tugged at the bench. It would not move. Feeling so dizzy that she scarcely knew what she was doing, she made a last desperate attempt to force the door. "Oh, please open," she whispered. "Please." Until next time.